Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our special midday keynote today. I hope you've had a great morning, enjoying some fantastic sessions here at Sports Philanthropy World. We're very lucky now to be joined again by Marc Pollick from the Giving Back Fund. He's going to sit down with Kojo Annan and talk about some of the amazing work that he's doing with his organization. I'm going to turn it over to Marc to do the introductions and look forward to a fascinating conversation.
Thank you so much, Roy. Well, the wonders of technology. I am sitting in Los Angeles and I'm able to sit down with Kojo Annan, who's I think sitting in Ghana. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Correct.
Just outside of Accra.
Good. So hopefully with technology, everybody can hear and we're going to have a wonderful conversation, a really important conversation about sport in Africa. But before we do that, I want to properly introduce Kojo. Many of you on the call at the conference may recognize his last name. It is a famous last name, and he had a famous father. Kofi Annan was the Secretary General of the United Nations for 10 years. He was a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize in 2001. I know something about that prize, having worked with Elie Wiesel for more than 30 years. It is the most important prize you can win on Earth, the Nobel Peace Prize. And Kojo was fortunate to grow up as his son. I usually like to just tell you about somebody and not read. I don't like reading when I'm on stage or doing an interview, but Kojo's bio is so extensive that I am going to read you a little bit of it because I don't want to get it wrong. So forgive me for reading parts of this and not having memorized it. Kojo Annan is a serial entrepreneur and investor with an extensive global network and a strong track record of growing new businesses across international markets. He is currently managing Vector Global, a single family office centered primarily on two main pillars, a regional focus within West Africa and a global interest in innovation, lifestyle, and well-being. He's also chairman and co-founder of Made in Africa. Made in Africa is a luxury group that bridges African high culture with a global audience. It is led by a team of international retail, distribution, and fashion experts with over 100 years of combined experience in the sector. There's more, but I want to come down to Kojo from a young age has had a love for sport. In the period between 1999 and 2003, he served as the president of Vevey Sports FC in Switzerland, and through his companies undertook the marketing campaign for the FIFA U20 World Cup 1999 in Nigeria and the African Cup of Nations in 2000, as well as becoming a marketing partner for the Ghana national football team from 2000 to 2003. In 2016, and this is what brings him to us, he founded Africa 10, A10, a social enterprise dedicated to developing African youth through sports and education. A10 has commenced operation by providing scholarships to young Africans in order to attend established sports education university programs in the UK. Kojo holds degrees in economics and political science and is fluent in both French and English and proficient in Yoruba. So I think we'll conduct this interview in Yoruba, if that's okay.
Sure,
Yeah.
Why not?
Kojo, you've certainly, let's start, before we come to Sport in Africa and A10, let's start with telling the audience a little bit beyond just what I read about what it was like to grow up as the son of the Secretary General of the United Nations, which I can't imagine the people you have had the opportunity to meet and the life you must have led in New York. So can you tell us a little bit about your younger life, and then we'll come to the amazing things that you're doing now through sport?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Well, I mean, growing up, for me, I guess it was just like any other kid, because obviously whilst my father was a famous global statesman, to me, it's just my dad. Obviously being the son of a diplomat, we grew up living, we were used to living, I guess, in different countries. So at various stages of my life, I lived in New York, I lived in Switzerland, I lived in London. And then, so I think you develop sort of being quite comfortable in different zones and different cultures and different types of people globally. It just becomes normal for you to deal with people from, all over the world. And of course, because of my late dad, I got to meet, very many interesting people. Obviously, I had a great role model that gave me a lot of inspiration as a dad.
What, I don't want to put you on the spot, but this is a question that probably has many answers, but what was one or two of the most important things that you learned in life from your father?
I think, good question. I think one of the most important things I learned from him was about respect, and treating everybody with respect. So whether you're the king of a country or you're the toilet cleaner or janitor, every human being, man or respect. And I think that's a very important lesson that, my sister, myself, and all of us learned, and was, drilled into us by my father, to always give every human being their due regard and their due respect.
Very, very good. Yeah, I don't think there's anything more important than that. Well, when you first came to us at the Impact Fund a couple months ago, you told me some things that really excited me. We talked, if you remember, about 810, and we talked about the continent of Africa having all of these really fabulous athletes, but not a system in place to develop them. The way in the United States, everybody on this Zoom is familiar with AAU, the Amateur Athletic Union, and with different schools in the United States where elite athletes can attend, like the Bollettieri Academy and others, to go to school and hone their athletic skills at the same time. But that system doesn't exist in Africa. And so you have a vision, a grand vision, through 810 and other means to create these things on the continent of Africa. Tell me a little bit about what 810 is and what inspired the creation of it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Well, I mean, 810 is stands for Africa 10, or 810 for short, which is really about focusing on identifying excellence in Africa and helping to nurture it and develop it. I think it's really on the premise that I sort of founded 810 on the premise that, the whole world historically is focused on Africa for its resources, whether it's, gold, copper, oil, diamonds, etc. But we've always felt that Africa's greatest resource is its human resource. You have a continent of over 1 billion people, of which 70% are 30 and under. So you have by far the youngest population in the world, brimming full of talent and exceptionalism, but so many of them don't get the platform or the opportunity for their talent to flourish in a way that we would take for granted, growing up in New York or London or other major Western countries. So the development of Africa 10 was to, and still is to, identify, develop, mentor, and nurture the next generation of African champions and give them the platform and the opportunity to excel and reach their true potential. And I think just like you and myself, as a lover of sports and the beautiful game, we know that sports is not just about what happens on the field. I think it plays a significant role in society. It creates unity. It brings people together across all divisions. In Africa, for example, you have 54 countries, and there's often divisions, be it along tribal or religious reasons or various other cultural differences. But when it comes to sports, everybody's united around excellence. And all the divisions are thrown out the window when people are celebrating the best or getting thrilled by, outstanding sporting talent. And in fact, the reason why I was a few minutes late jumping on the call, Mark, is because over here, there's this thing called the Euros happening in the rest of the world. I'm not sure you guys are aware over there, but there was a little match between England and Germany just finished. And I was just praying that they finished in regular time so I could make it on for the call and not miss the match. But therein lies the power of sport, and the whole continent of Europe and half of the world was captivated by this match. And we see, and part of the vision of Africa 10 was I grew up, following sports all over the world and just kept seeing this incredible pipeline of talent from Africa, but knowing that they just did not have the same opportunities as we would get in the West. And one day I was playing soccer in Chelsea Pier in New York on a rooftop overlooking Manhattan at like 10:30 at night with a bunch of friends, floodlit pitch. And then I realized that, wow, so much that we take for granted, because when I play with the young kids here in Nigeria or Ghana, West Africa, they have a window of playing football from 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun rises until 8, and then it gets too hot. And then in the afternoons, they can play from 4 when the sun comes down until about 6 p.m. and then it's too hot. I'm sorry, and then it's dark. And then of course, very few people have floodlights and so on and so forth. So I suddenly thought, well, actually, they're already disadvantaged on some of the most basic things because they don't have these opportunities. And that sort of led to the formation of the vision of Africa 10 of, why can't, if we're all lovers of this sports, and what we love about sports is the meritocracy and the excellence of it, and regardless of which village or city you're from in the US, you can become the top of the tree, then why should we not be able to collectively give some of these same opportunities to incredibly talented young men or women in other parts of the world that don't have those same platforms or pathways to excellence? And then I think, Mark, I was explaining to you about the vision and the idea of an A10 Pan-African youth tournament, sort of based similarly along the lines of March Madness, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with in the US, of course. And I felt we could replicate a similar model over here with a Pan-African youth tournament that again is focusing on the best of the best. So it could be the best kids from Accra against the best ones from Lagos, against the best ones from Dakar, just like you would have, North Carolina against Michigan, against, and so on and so forth. But then we also came up with the idea that if you could develop the premium tournament, then you could also integrate a strong element of education, because part of the reason why we've created the vision for A10 is that, coming from a fairly elite family in Africa, and a lot of young people always coming to me, asking me to help them get a club, help them chase their dream, help them want to become the next superstar soccer player. And you and I know that 99.9% of them are not going to make it. So I've also admired the US model, where at least the top sportsmen, even the ones that make it, get a college education, and they might not be they might not be the straight A students, but that college education still gives them a platform for life, regardless of where their future takes them. And in Africa, that opportunity is greatly missing. And then there's millions of young kids who are going to want to try and be the next superstar Drogba. And when they don't make it, they don't have a fallback, because not only have they not made it and there's no pathway to anything else, they've also had a very limited education. So the dream was that if we could develop, a Pan-African youth tournament, it could provide the best talent, but it could also have a massive widespread impact on education if you had, similar to the US, minimum grade standards infused into the tournament. So the kids aspire to their dream, but also have to have basic education to even qualify to do what they love. I hope that makes sense.
Sure. So really, it's sort of establishing what we have as an NCAA here, but on the continent of Africa.
Yeah, I mean, something, it would have to be a localized, obviously, version, but conceptually, yes. Conceptually, yes. And I've always used, obviously, due to historic and many years of history and colonization, Africa is a continent of 54 countries, which is quite divided. But in reality, I often did a lot of comparatives with the US, because 50 states, 54 countries. If you looked at many countries similar to a state in terms of the scale and the size of the economies, and sort of, then you get a comparative model to what you have with NCAA.
Is your dream to accomplish this intra-country, or would it be nationwide? Would it be something that all countries on the continent could participate in, or you would have each?
Yeah, I mean, the dream would be for it to be Pan-African, which is why I use the US model. You would first become the champion of your state, or in this case, your country, and then the top ones from each would qualify until you would have how you have the Elite Eight and the Final Four. So there'll be regional qualifications, and then everyone gets to the big dance. Yeah.
Right. So really, what you're saying is that sport could have the power to bring countries together in ways that almost nothing else can.
100%. I think we see it. We're going to see it shortly with the Olympics. We see it with World Cups. We see it. It can be Wimbledon, US Open, Super Bowl. Sports is the great unifier. And I mean, even if you take the United States, for example, it's not by coincidence that the level of investment that goes into sports, right from the little leagues all across the US, whether it's soccer, baseball, basketball, right until the highest level. And it's all about, there's a direct comparative to investments into sports. And I think, again, using the model in the US, what I admire about the US is that thing they drill into everybody about being the best. And even though they apply in the sports, I think it has a massive impact on your country and the United States in general, because whether you become an innovator or a business person or Silicon Valley, you want to build the best, because that's the mentality that's been driven through the country.
Since you mentioned the US Open, just on cue here, I have my US Open coffee cup right here. So let's segue into talking about a specific athlete. One of the things that we've discussed is that there's no place for elite athletes to really get the kind of training that could elevate them into the elite ranks, to play in a Wimbledon, to play in a US Open. And I think you're working with one now that would be an example of the power of A10. Talk to me a little bit about the tennis player that you've been mentoring and nurturing, and how that fits into the overall dream that you have for A10.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we've identified, just as an example of what we mean by A10, there's a young lady called Equia Akoma Hansen. She's Ghanaian, but grew up mainly started growing up in Germany. Her parents came from rather humble beginnings, so she used to watch some other kids play tennis, and she couldn't play because, it's an elite sport and you had to be members of certain clubs. So they used to watch from the other side of the fence. And then once, when the other kids weren't there, her and her dad snuck over the fence and started playing a bit of tennis using a racket. It was actually a man's racket, so it's old. It was way too heavy for her, but she started learning. And then the groundsman or the caretaker caught them, but he kind of took a soft spot on her and liked her and allowed them to play a bit secretly when the people weren't there. And then, fast forward a year later, she beats all of the competition in the neighborhood. And then she moves back to Ghana about a year, I think a year ago or less than a year ago. And this year she won the Accra Open, which is the biggest tournament in Ghana. And she's 13, and she beat everybody, every other lady in Ghana at 13. That is an example of an A10 potential, but I know already that the father and the family have reached their maximum and they've been borrowing and scraping and trying. But now for this girl to get to her next level, she's going to need investment in coaching, travel, training. And if there's no A10, that's the end of her journey and her opportunity in life. But there is an A10. We believe that we can get the community to come around, invest, support, and hence the A10 motto is about the power of 10, because if 10, give 10, it becomes 100, it becomes 1,000, and so on and so forth. And so really, it's about the power of the community to get behind their champions and give them the pathway to excellence. And hopefully we'll be seeing a queer in some years' times at Wimbledon or Flushing Meadows, etc. And that's the sort of vision. And then if we back to the idea is we'd have a structure where they would give a return on investment so that we would create 10 more equias. And that's the cycle of wealth that we're trying to develop sort of for the community, by the community, and by those who love sports and the beautiful games.
She has a beautiful name. So really, I can envision this, and tell me what you think, on two levels. One is to be able to nurture and take a talent like Akua and elevate her to the maximum of her potential. And then the second track, it sounds like for everybody else who's really interested in sports, it gives them an opportunity to have coaching, to have a place to play, to have tournaments, so that not only are the elite athletes helped, but everybody who wants to engage in sports has a place to do it.
Very, very much so. And I think, as you said, sports to us has key fundamentals and life skills, teaches you about teamwork, dedication, discipline, of course, your general health benefits, community, camaraderie. So we see, you know, there's a multi-layered benefits of developing sports in general. And it's, you know, that's why even my late father developed at the UN Sports for Development, because we all see and know that sports is a key part of development of a society. Anyway, because, you know, a lot is learned on the rules or on the field of play that get applied in life. And as you said, it creates the unity, creates communities, and develops champions. And even those, as you said, who are not the elite, it prepares them for life.
Let's talk for a second about the network of coaches throughout Africa. Do you have, or are you looking to develop a network of really qualified coaches in sports for the continent? Did we lose you? Kojo? Kojo?
Sorry, I think
There you are.
It's freezing.
It froze. Did you hear my question? I could repeat it.
Absolutely.
Are you able to hear my question? Roy? Kojo, are you frozen? It sounds like you're trying to speak. Roy, what would be the best thing to do? Should I ask him to try to call back in?
Suggest that he turn off his video because of bandwidth, give it a few minutes and then let him try again. I've had this problem with other people.
I'm back. I'm back, guys.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Can you hear me, Kojo?
Yeah, sorry. So whilst we're solving the sports issues, let's fix the bandwidth over here as well.
Okay, we'll do that too. That
can be a secondary part of the plan, yeah.
Well, I'm going to call Biden and have him add that to our infrastructure bill.
Fantastic, fantastic.
So the question I asked you before you froze was about a network of coaches in Africa. Does there exist right now a qualified network of coaches, or is that something that you have to develop also?
Yeah, I mean, there are coaches, but again, you know, you're really scratching the surface here. So I would say if you did a direct comparative, you know, for every top level coach in Europe in soccer, for example, you're probably dealing at 100 to 1 or 1,000 to 1 compared to to the equivalent that you would find over here. And obviously, you see just in the US, even just from college sports, just the importance of coaches, the role they play, not just in developing top athletes, but developing, you know, fully rounded and great young men and women. And so many people refer back to you about the coaches and the impact those coaches had in their life development. And we would love to create what we were calling the Local Heroes program to develop, because the idea is that, you know, if you train an army of coaches, you're developing an army of change agents that could have, you know, 10, again, using the A10, they could have 10-fold impact on the youth. But you need the coaches need to be trained in order to have the relevant impact on the kids.
Oh, absolutely. I think you hear stories all the time from elite athletes on how their careers were profoundly impacted by a coach who believed in them when they maybe didn't even believe in themselves when they were a child, and they ended up, you know, becoming an elite athlete through the belief of that coach. We have an organization in the United States called the Positive Coaching Alliance. which might be a good organization to learn some lessons from to apply to create something similar in Africa. Because I would imagine if 810 really takes off and ends up being in a Pan-African project, you're going to need lots and lots of coaches, and the training of those coaches would be very important. Did you freeze again?
So as you said, Mark, the Positive Coaching Alliance does amazing work and has really put together some great training sessions. And as Kojo looks to expand that, I think that it's really going to be a terrific opportunity for him to partner with a group that does that coaching training to jump in there. So it looks like we have Kojo back.
Yeah, sorry.
Kojo,
Yeah.
First of all, I want to extend the opportunity for anybody in our audience that has a comment or a question that you might like to ask Kojo. Feel free to put it in the chat. I'll see it and I'll be happy to ask him. But in the meantime, let me ask you an important question, Kojo. As you build out 810, what resources are you looking for most? What opportunities are there? We have in this audience people from universities and from sport organizations and from businesses all over the world, from countries all over the world, and also major institutions in the United States. If you could have anything, what types of things are needed?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think obviously funding support is critical because we're developing a foundation, and funding is obviously critical. But to get these programs going outside of funding, you would need technical support, strategic partnerships. So it could be with coaching departments, sort of transfer of know-how and knowledge. I think sports, those of us who are real passionate about sports, we can see it's becoming increasingly technical. All the great sports now are using more data analytics, more sports science. So definitely in terms of partnerships with organizations that already have all of this know-how that could be shared with organizations, whether, as I said, it could be in sports science, it could be in data, it could be in coaching, it could be in whatever are the latest tools used to reach optimum peak performance. And then also from the organizational point of view, strategic partnerships around, with larger schools, organizations that are used to developing tournaments at scale. All of that know-how would be invaluable.
And I know that you were, as a young man, a rugby star. What sports have the most interest? And we know that soccer is all over the continent. But beyond soccer, what other sports in Africa have really taken hold? We've worked with several NBA players, Luol Deng and Emmanuel Mudiay and Dikembe Mutombo from Africa. We've worked with Amobi Okoye, that's the right pronunciation, Amobi Okoye from Nigeria, who made it to the NFL. But what sports beyond soccer do you think?
Yeah, I would say beyond soccer, you have pockets of rugby and pockets of cricket. That just comes from that's more from the historic ties to Britain, and so in the countries there. But I would say definitely basketball is growing rapidly as potentially a second sport. You recently had the launch of the BAL, which is the Basketball Africa League, which is in partnership with the NBA. So we actually had our own version of the Orlando bubble, but they had it in Kigali in the Rwanda, and I think you had a lot of the top NBA, Adam Silver and co were all there. Plus, of course, many of these great African talents. I think if you use the NBA currently as the example of what I'm trying to say about the pipeline of African talent, in the last NBA draft, I think just from Nigeria alone, in the top 30, I think there's 10 or 11 players of Nigerian descent in the top 30 in the last NBA draft. So just to give you context of the talent, that's available, and they've really invested. I think the NBA and a group of strategic investors have valued this new NBA Africa structure at about $1 billion. and they're raising from there. And I think there's a huge opportunity for basketball to become, the second sport. And then, of course, whilst American football or NFL is not played out there, the physical potential and the capacity of athletes that you have on there, again, to me, have always been a no-brainer, because I know a lot of the NFL is based on physical attributes, like you have to run such and such in 40 yards, live there. So there's so many talented young athletes here that could, with the right training, easily enter NFL, college or school or, higher level teams. So I think soccer is by far ahead, but basketball is coming very quickly, and the NBA has seen that. And there's a lot of investment going into developing basketball here.
What about tennis? I know you talked about your prodigy, but African-wide, is tennis being played?
Yeah. Tennis is being played, but as I said earlier, tennis is, we sometimes forget, is quite an elite sport. So there's definitely a love for tennis, but there's not much. There's not enough as there should be. So again, these are the opportunities: more pitches, more courts, more coaching, more know-how, and then more kids can participate. Definitely the talent is there, but there's less and less infrastructure.
Sure.
And golf, we have, A10, we also have two boys. We're going to be supporting two young Cameroonian golfers, but they've actually relocated to Florida. So, there's many sports coming.
If the opportunity exists to send some of the elite athletes to the United States, is that something that A10 would want to support, or are you more focused on building the infrastructure in Africa so that it's there for everybody? Uh-oh. There you are.
Yeah. Well, I think it could actually be a combination thereof. Certainly a core focus is to develop the infrastructure and the skill set in Africa. That's certainly a core focus. But we've already, we have strategic partner organizations that we already partner with, like Right to Dream and some other fantastic academies that have already been developing a pipeline of talent of young boys and girls that they take. They get scholarships to high schools in the US. Many have gone on to sort of get either a college degree or play in the MLS. And they've developed fantastically rounded young men who are great sportsmen, but getting great college or high school degrees in the US. But our real vision is that you have to somehow sign up to give back. So even if you end up playing in the US and developing skills, we encourage all the people who are part of the system to somehow, obviously we can't force them, but the aim is for everyone to want to give back to that cycle of wealth in one way or another, either by going back or contributing or supporting. But we definitely very much encourage for them to go and take the opportunities wherever the opportunity is given. And there's a good pipeline that go to the US currently.
Is the university system in Africa at all similar to the United States in that it provides scholarships for elite athletes?
No, there's very few universities that I'm aware of. And of course, Africa is a big place, so I can't speak for every country and continent, but from my knowledge, there's very few that have this sort of college athletes scholarship programs, yeah.
So there isn't the kind of college sports network that we have here in the United States. So that's why what you're doing with A10 is so significant, because it really will establish something as we use the college system here for all of the athletes to participate on the continent of Africa.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fragmentation and division, and what you have is the strength of a united group that sort of sits over and controls all the different regions and states that feed into. So we don't have like a particular centralized system. We have various organizations, or they might be specific to their different countries, but there's not really sort of like you have certain organizations, like you have CAF, which is the Confederation of African Football, but we don't have the core college NCAA type thing. We have individual colleges and, you know, individual countries have their own system, but there's not an overarching Pan-African college one like that.
So in summary, A10 has the opportunity, has the potential not only to build bridges between countries and young people through sport, but also to provide a platform for elite athletes to get the coaching, the training, and the attention and the resources they need to reach the highest level of success and potential that they could reach. Is
exactly?
That...
I mean, so I mean, just to give you a couple of statistics to give context. No African, I mean, we're just having the Euros now. No African team ever in history has reached the semi-final of a World Cup. I mean, don't get me wrong, America hasn't either, but it's not your sport. But no African team has ever reached even the semi-final of a World Cup, you know, in all this history. And just further context, the last Olympics, sorry, have you lost me again?
No, we can hear you. I can hear you.
Have I lost you?
No, we can hear you.
Am I there?
Yes.
Yeah, so just another interesting stat. The last Olympics in, I think it was Rio, the whole of continent of Africa collectively, all 54 countries, between all of them won 10 gold medals. And Michael Phelps alone won 5. So that's not a criticism of Michael Phelps. That's just to me a representation of the underfunding of the talents, because I don't believe that one man can be better than 1.2 billion people. But, you know, he literally won half of the medals of the whole continent of Africa, and therein is the opportunity.
No, and in the Olympics before that, he won 18.
There you go.
So there's really just enormous potential. We are so excited to support you with A10, and I invite anybody in the audience here at the Sports World Philanthropy Conference who wants more information to reach out to me. I'd be happy to forward your inquiries to Kojo, have you become involved. But we are thrilled to be able to speak to you today, Kojo. Thank you so much for making time. And on behalf of the entire crew at Roy and everybody on his team at the Sports Philanthropy World,
thank you so much.
We thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate your time. It was a fantastic conversation, and I know that there's so much amazing work that you're doing there. We look forward to finding ways to collaborate with you to help expand and support that work. So Marc, thank you for setting this up. Kojo, thank you for sharing our time with us, and for everybody else. We look forward to seeing you at the top of the hour for our next session with a very happy set of English Premier League clubs that just had a 2-0 victory over Germany. So well, there'll be a little bit of celebrating on the panel. We'll see you all soon.